Welcome back to another episode of the Legacy Builder Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle McGee. And on this podcast, we sit down with high-performing entrepreneurs to unpack their mindset, the habits behind the headlines, and the legacy they're building in business and life. Today, we're going to do exactly that with our guest, Mr. Chad Henderson. Chad is the founder, CEO, and managing partner of Catalyst Healthcare Real Estate, a company he's grown from a boutique regional shop into a national healthcare real estate platform with investments across 23 states and more than $2.5 billion in healthcare assets. He's also the co-founder and a principal of Andrews Medicine alongside world-renowned orthopedic surgeon Dr. James Andrews, building an integrated sports medicine platform that goes far beyond real estate and into the heart of healthcare operations. In addition to Catalyst and Andrews Medicine, Chad is the visionary and primary investor behind 3 transformative developments shaping the future of Northwest Florida. Outlying Fields, a 540-acre master plan community in Beulah, the East Garden District in downtown Pensacola, and Ransley Station, a 60-acre gateway development in Northwest Florida. Chad and his wife, Brooke, live in Pensacola and are raising 4 children, Charlie, Archie, Mary Jean, and Hattie Bell. Chad, welcome to the show.
Wow. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. That was a mouthful there. I appreciate you working through that. Yeah, glad to be here. I know we've been working to match up schedules, and I'm glad this worked out. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to say we started the podcast about 7 months ago, and I think you were the first person or one of the first people I reached out to. And let me just say, nobody has ever accused me of lacking persistence. I was scrolling through our text thread, and I think I counted 7 different attempts for me to get Chad on the show. So I'm still not sure which took more persistence, me getting my wife to marry me or for you to come onto this podcast. So either way, glad you're here.
No, I'm excited to be here. You know, with what you rattled off there, I mean, having, 4 kids keeps my wife and I busy in addition to all the good work we're trying to do. So I appreciate you hanging in there with me. And again, glad to be here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive right in. When someone asks what you do today, how do you answer that? Are you a real estate guy, a healthcare guy, or someone else entirely?
Oh, it's a great question. I think, in the heart of hearts of what I do, I'm the CEO and founder of Catalyst Healthcare Real Estate, and all that I do. I mean, that is my core focus. Certainly there's an element of real estate to that. There's an element of healthcare to that. So the crossroads there is kind of where we really work hard to create our special sauce. But I guess in my heart of hearts, Kyle, I'm a real estate guy, wrapped in, some entrepreneurship, I think.
Yeah, love that. And before we get into this journey, because I mean, you really do, you've had some amazing accomplishments, and I know you're just getting going, so it's exciting. You've led Catalyst through more than $2.5 billion in healthcare real estate across 20 plus states. If your 18-year-old self could see your platform and business today, what would surprise him most about you? And not specifically like your balance sheet, but like you as a man and a person.
That's a great question. I think a couple of things. First is that being knocked down early on, and getting up multiple times after being knocked down, and continue to have that kind of never quit, mindset, and always looking at the glass half full and being optimistic about what's out in front of me and the people around me. I think I'd be very proud of that. And I don't know, as an 18-year-old, if I would have thought of myself to be able to persevere as much as I've had. I also think that I know one thing that my 18-year-old self would hold me accountable for is because long before I was 18, I was instilled with a lot of values and characteristics that my parents and my grandparents put in me of doing things the right way and treating people the right way and working with integrity and a lot of work ethic. And I think I've stayed true to that. So I'm proud of that. But yeah, perseverance and just, the mindset of doing things the right way and, one foot in front of the other and taking the good with the bad.
Yeah, I think it's a good point and something that we definitely want to go deeper into later on in the podcast as far as overcoming challenges and obstacles. But I think you make a great point. And you said before you built this great business, you built it on a foundation of values, right? So you study anybody that has done anything great before they accomplished that, they were high character. They were adding value to others. They were treating people right. So it's not, okay, once I accomplish this, I'm going to do these things. You have to lead with it. So I'm glad that you started that. So for any, young or anybody listening, like, don't wait until the future. Start now. Build how you're going to be when you're successful in the early days of your career. So take us back to the early days before Catalyst and what you're doing now. I heard you share the story about you selling ice cream on the boat to tourists. Where did that hustle come from, and what did that season teach you about opportunity?
Yeah, that was a great experience for me. When I was 15, I worked. My first job was at a marina, and it was a great experience for me. It was out towards Orange Beach, Alabama, so a bit of a drive. We had to be there at 5:30 in the morning, and I caught rides when I was 15, and I turned 16 over that summer, and learned to get up early and be there at 5:30. And it was a great experience to work at a marina. But sitting on those docks, it was typically a rush right there in the morning with people going fishing, and then a little bit of a lull until people got out and about in the boat, that are just joyriding. So a lot of time to think. And had some friends that were in the other kind of tourist-oriented business of parasailing and those types of things. I knew a guy that had this idea that we started talking about of selling ice cream. And so that summer, at the end of that summer, I left the marina and had my dad's boat. And then eventually I bought a little inflatable boat. And what really took shape at the end of that first summer, I hit the ground running with 4 or 5 summers thereafter. And in the inflatable boat, we would pull up and down Romar Beach or on the Gulf side in front of the condos, playing music up, echoing off the condo buildings. And kind of our thesis was, who is going to deny a kid a $2 ice cream on vacation? And about the time they got annoyed with me walking by with my music, they were leaving and going back to Atlanta or Nashville or Birmingham, and the next set of folks were coming in. And then on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we would have my little 15-foot motorized boat that go around, Ono Island, Robinson Island, Perdido Key, and selling to people on their docks. And so grew to having, some employees. Those employees and team members were, in my college years were my fraternity brothers. So it turned into having a lot of fun, while we were selling ice cream. I need to admit that a lot of our profit ended up in the Floribama quite a few nights. So we had a lot of good time. But it was really eye-opening for me to be able to have an idea, set out and take some risk. I borrowed the money from my grandfather to buy this inflatable boat. I paid him back in literally 2 weeks. And it was very validating to have an idea, to act upon that idea and have some success and to think outside the box. And that really stuck with me early on. It really helped to shape me as thinking about being an entrepreneur. And despite the jellyfish and the big waves and the summer storms, there was a lot of fun and a lot of success that was had on those 5 summers or so selling ice cream.
Yeah, love it. It's a great story. Real quick, there was a kid on a recent family trip that I had doing the same thing, had his cart, and we had like 40 family members out there, all these little kids running around. And I was laughing with my cousin, and I was like, oh man, can't get ice cream, no cash. And of course, he had his little QR code to his Venmo account, and my cousin ended up with like a $200 ice cream bill, which was awesome.
Yep, that is awesome.
Gotta respect the hustle.
There's some margin in the $200 ice cream order, I can tell you that firsthand. But yeah, I would have had to adapt by now, find some waterproof ways to get some QR codes and get some Venmos for sure.
But you make a great, and you said something that I want to pull out real quick, and it's really about taking action. How many people and how many kids and of your friends, and still to this day, there's so many people that can talk a big game, or they have this big vision, or they want to do this thing, but there's fewer people. And this one of the the things that inspires me most about you and guys like you are action takers, right? So you have this big vision and you have this mindset where you've cultivated these like big goals, but you also are following it up with action, and you've become addicted to taking action towards these goals. And that's really what it takes to separate yourself from the pack. It's not about talk. It's not about casting vision. It's about putting yourself out there and taking action. And
Yeah.
it sounds like you did that with the loan,
I think you're hitting on something really important, is that because by taking action, you can learn by doing. I mean, in everything that I've done in my life that I've took action on, there has certainly been quite a few things that have not gone right and have not gone to plan. But that led to somewhere else, and that led to an experience that we all can learn from and get better by doing. So learn by doing for sure. Obviously you want to have some sort of plan in place and some sort of well thought out action plan. But the reality is that you're going to learn so much by taking action and learn by doing. And so when things, we all know that we probably learn more from things that go wrong than things that go right. But if you're sitting, waiting for, I say all the time, if you're sitting for waiting for perfect, it'll never happen. You can't let perfect get in the way of great, and you can't let great get in the way of good. Good's good enough. And if you keep doing things over and over and over, good enough turns to great. And so, you gotta learn by doing.
Yeah. And how many of your pro formas have actually gone exactly as planned, whether it's knocked it out the park and gone way better, or it's underperformed? We can't predict the future of the market, and the uncertainty that goes on with so many other factors that drive performance on these deals. So just learn by doing. You mentioned jellyfish and obstacles. Were there any early failures or dumb mistakes, and kind of moving on past the ice cream days into like your early part of your career and your first ventures, that ended up being gifts for you later as a CEO?
Sure. I mean, I have, and I've told this story before, but I had some epic failures early on. In fact, I got married in 2007, and being involved in, having some risk tolerance and being involved in real estate early on in my career. I graduated from college in 2001 and immediately got into business for myself. Found my way into real estate and being involved in real estate in 2004 and 5. And if for those who remember that time period, you really didn't have to be that good at real estate to have some success. I mean, if you were willing to take a little bit of risk and put yourself out there in real estate, despite yourself, you were probably successful. And that was me. And so I was telling myself how smart I was, and how good I was at this real estate investing and development aspect in 2004 and 5 and 6. And of course, the world stopped, and it all came crashing down in 07 and 08. And, I was just married in 07 and had we had built a house on the water. I mean, really nice house. I mean, bigger and better than I'd ever thought I would be moving into as a young married man. And that quickly turned into, essentially having to short sell that house, a mere, 2 or 3 years later. I think we ended up, basically selling the house for almost exactly, probably a little bit more than half than we had in it. And obviously it was really, really difficult. I certainly felt, as like I failed and dejected. And here I am. Everybody that watched me had some early success. I had to completely start over. I was lucky enough that all of this happened in a time where I jokingly say it was cool to go broke, because everybody was going broke. And so, the ability to navigate that, I held my head high and, got through that house, as well as a few broken subdivisions and other investments that didn't come to fruition, but tried to make everybody as whole as humanly possible and being proactive in that effort. But ultimately, it was just not possible to do that. And so I walked away, but free of any judgments or bankruptcy, but absolutely had to completely start over and reset. And was living out of basically $100,000 line of credit that I was managed to salvage out of all of that noise and haziness of coming out of that time period. But I learned a ton. I mean, to your question, to be very direct, I mean, I learned an absolute ton. To see, a very vibrant market where it's kind of a no lose investment environment, to everything crashing down at such a short time period, at such an early part of my career, really helped to shape me in my thought process of what I want to be, maybe what a real opportunity looks like, what real partners look like. And I came out of there telling myself, I didn't want to be just a deal guy, not somebody that was trying to be at the right place at the right time, but really wanted to offer up a true value added proposition to whatever, sector of industry of real estate that I chose to serve. And that really kind of led my way into this thought process of getting into healthcare real estate.
So before we get into the journey of Catalyst, I think that there's something important to touch on here, and it's the mindset, right? Because I could imagine, so you're had some success, you're recently married, you had a beautiful home, lose it, right? And then you have these deals that are going sour, you're losing money. A lot of people would succumb to telling themselves that we're not going to make it through this, right? Like, go get a job, not cut out for this, or have the victim mentality of like I got screwed. Was there something or somebody, something you read, somebody that was in your life that really helped develop your mindset to be resilient and to like keep moving forward?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that prop me up to forge ahead. One of these, I'm a very optimistic person, and I think that a lot of successful entrepreneurs benefit by being optimists and always, kind of seeing through the negative and understanding that if you work hard, you persevere, and you keep doing the right things, eventually good things will happen. I got to say, though, that growing up in a close-knit family and being surrounded by love and support, it's always, when you have a soft landing, and no matter what you do, it makes you feel good. And so, my mom was a school teacher. My dad worked at the Navy base. My grandfather started his business in tombstones and working in cemeteries. So very comfortable, but certainly didn't come from any, great wealth or anything, but we were always close. We were always together and surrounded each other with love and support. So I think, having that as a safety net and a soft landing, also fantastic support by my wife, very early on. I mean, she was in it to win it. She had a job and we were basically living off of her salary. So I think, having that, it was a great place to get back on my feet from. At the end of the day, when we all know that you got to believe in yourself. And so I've always believed in myself and knowing that if I worked hard and had great work ethic and treated people right, that eventually good things will happen. I'll say also is that, I've surrounded myself with a friend network, and that I had friends that were entrepreneurs, and I learned from their successes and their failures. And then I knew that as if I was growing things around me that would benefit others, that eventually it would benefit me. Mm-hmm. And so, some people call that, maybe playing long ball, if you will. But playing for kind of the long-term growth. And I've always had that mentality of thinking about what happens next, what happens after that, what happens after that. And not looking for necessarily an immediate return or immediate, get rich quick kind of a thing. It was always about building foundations, building relationships, treating people right. And I think that mindset really helped me, to get back up and forge ahead.
Yeah, love it. It's very strong. I think, when leaders come from that servant-minded to serve others, whether it's partners or customers, you're always serving others. Eventually, you get the rewards. So let's jump into building Catalyst, because this is a beast, right? Not many people can say that they've first. There's this tranche of people that you got to give credit of any entrepreneur, right? Because it's difficult, right? It's very difficult to get started. It takes a leap of faith, right? So that's one phase, is just being an entrepreneur, period. Then there's these rare people like yourself who've built multiple billion-dollar organizations. You started Catalyst as a boutique shop focused on the Southeast. What was the original thesis, and how has it evolved now that you're a national platform?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you, Kyle, that, I did all types of research and I wrote this, wonderful, business plan that I was following. The light bulb went off for me, as I was kind of coming out of the haze of the great financial crisis. And I had done, really by happenstance, a couple of very small clinics. And, thought to myself, boy, it would have been nice to have more of these to help me carry me through this cycle that I just experienced. I also thought to myself, again, based on the premise that I wanted to be a value-added proposition to whatever sector of real estate I serve, I thought to myself, there wasn't, many people that were focused on the niche of healthcare real estate in our neck of the woods, and I thought that maybe I could differentiate myself by doing that. And certainly, a little bit of luck involved that the Affordable Care Act was passed, and that this transition and movement more towards value-based care and the need to have more ambulatory access points to create better access to healthcare closer to where people live and work certainly really helped to fuel the opportunity in healthcare real estate. So in the beginning, it really wasn't a platform approach. In fact, my first couple of clinics were very strictly from a development and an investment point of view. I quickly realized that the way in which maybe you would service and interact with healthcare and healthcare real estate is a little bit different than other types of real estate out there. And so thought to myself that, it would be interesting to create a service platform that would help, healthcare as healthcare delivery continued to change and mold and go towards more of this outpatient-centric environment. And so early on, it was investing in some real estate that made sense, income-producing real estate that was healthcare-oriented, and then almost like a property management platform of devoted to healthcare. And so in the early days of Catalyst, it looked a lot different. I mean, we were doing almost like facility management scope of work. We were helping property management. We had technicians that were changing light bulbs and doing moves for physicians. And way different than it was now. But what it allowed us to do is to really align with healthcare providers, understand what their pain points were and their challenges were. Eventually, it was always our goal to be in the investment and owning of these assets, but we were servicing the assets first. And there was a lot of learning curve associated with that. I've had some experiences, and I'll share one quick story, is that I remember in the early days of Catalyst when we were working on these special projects, we called them, and we had one of our technicians moving some furniture and equipment from one suite of physicians to another suite, and we were moving this what he thought was a refrigerator, and he moved it to the next suite. And I remember getting a call, and he said, "Hey, Chad, we got a problem." I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, we had this move today at over, XYZ clinic, and I moved the refrigerator like they asked me, but I never plugged it back in, and didn't realize that there was a bunch of, pharmaceuticals and medicine in this refrigerator, and it was, I don't know, I can't remember, maybe $30,000 or $40,000 worth of medicine." And I thought to myself, man, what the hell are we doing? For a $400 work order or whatever it was, now we're dealing with $40,000 of lost, of lost medicine. That's a far cry from my thought process of investing in real estate. So, back to our points earlier about, learning by doing.
Yeah.
So that was an aha moment for me about maybe going too far in this value-added proposition and really kind of reverting back to the mean and to the core of what we really wanted to do. But I think, serving healthcare and serving clients, we were able to build great relationships and learn from those interactions and really hone in on what our craft and what our offering really should be.
This is really important for people to hear because they see where you're at right now and what you've got going on in this enterprise, but no one wants to hear about the decades before, right? And it's this gradual curve. It's never, in today's day and age with AI and technology, people want these massive leaps in 2 years, right? 10x in 3 years. That's the new thing, scaling.com. They want a 10x in 3 years. But if you do that, the harder you or the bigger you are, the harder you fall if it's too quick, right? It's these gradual companies that really are the game changers that have built the muscles. One thing that I really, admire you about is your way to strategically think about things and form, the big picture. Can you talk me through some of your rhythms or space you create to be able to actually think strategically? Because I think that's what separates you from a lot of people is your strategic creativity.
Yeah, that's something that I think that you always got to have time for reflection. I mean, I think we call them postmortems. I mean, anytime we have a project or an initiative or an engagement, is really taking the time to think about what worked and what didn't work. And I think on the onset, we're talking about learn by doing. But the key, there's two key words in there. One is doing, but the other word is learning. And if you don't take time to really think about what just happened and what you could have done better, and maybe recognize the gap or recognize a missed opportunity, you're going to just keep doing and maybe you never get to where you want to go. So I think, reflecting is important. I think, I've always said, I think the most successful people that I've ever been around are the best listeners, people that can listen. You hear that, God gave you 2 ears and only one mouth for a reason. You got to be good listening. You got to be able to read the room. You got to be able to read personalities. And I think all of that can kind of help, to really hone in on a strategic vision or a thought and really help the map. I've always been really good at having a vision for where things are going to go. I'm not always the best in, the operationalizing and even executing perfectly on to get to that vision. But I think, thinking about what happens next, what happens after that, and what happens after that can really help to make you make decisions that are directionally correct, right? I mean, Again, don't let perfect get in the way of great and great get in the way of good. I mean, make these decisions, learn by doing, and reflect. And having that cadence and rhythm and being disciplined about that, I think, are all good tools in the toolbox to help you get where you want to go.
Well said. You touch on not being great at execution or operations. This is a great segue into team. I talk to some people about even what I do, which is a fraction of what you do. And they're like, man, you got all this different stuff going on and, you're doing a podcast and this, and you're also got 3 little boys, under 4. Like, how do you got time for it? And it's like, I got a great team. Like, I have great people in the organization that own responsibilities and really own it. I'd imagine the same, or I don't imagine, I know that that's the same case for you. You've got a team of like just rock stars and A players around you. How did you have to grow as a leader to attract these people? And what are you constantly doing to challenge them to grow and to continue to cast a bigger vision?
Yeah, I think, I've learned a lot along the way, and certainly, honestly, Kyle, don't have it all figured out. But I think that, there are certain team members that you have to rally around. Those team members come in all different, backgrounds, experiences, and skill sets. And you have to recognize that. And the team members that are really, really, really impactful early on may or may not be the same team members that are really impactful later on. And recognizing on how to put people in the right seats on the bus, I think, are very important. and being honest with yourself and honest with them about that. And that involves, discipline in how you communicate, and how you hold people accountable, and creating a cadence and a rhythm in which, you're having those conversations and those check-ins, because you may blink and the company, outgrow some of the folks. And you got to be honest about that with yourself. And you may, and some people don't want to go where you want to go, and you got to be honest about that. And I've experienced that. Doesn't mean that those folks aren't, vitally important and impactful of where you are at the time, but they may not want to be on the same journey that you're on. And having those very honest conversations, and check-ins, I think, are extremely important. Some people want to be leaders, some people don't want to be leaders, and it takes all to come together as a team and to execute. So, I've learned from those experiences. I've learned that, that some people want to grow and you want to invest with them in their personal and professional growth. Some people are really good at doing, X task, and they just want to continue to do that, and they don't want to be pushed out of that comfort zone, and that's okay too. So I think, you really, really have to look at people as your biggest assets. I say all the time, and we're in the real estate, game and in healthcare, and we work with big, big buildings and big projects, but as big as they are, they're not nearly as important as the people that make them go. And so orient yourself and orienting your operating rhythm to maximize, the skill sets and the efforts of your team while holding great organizational character and culture, I think is a huge key to having any huge success in any kind of business plan.
Yeah, I've heard it said, you have people in your life or your business for a reason. Some people in your life or business for a season, and some for a lifetime. And so being able to recognize that, and that's difficult because, like you said, what got us here might not get us there, right? Mm-hmm. And vision's constantly evolving and changing. And there's a level of you treat people right, but you can do it right. You can do it in the right way, right? And it's oftentimes better for the person too, right? For their next evolution of their career, and see that they were better because they were a part of your company for that season, right? So really good wisdom there. Let's talk Andrews Medicine for a minute. I think that this is super interesting. I think a lot of people have questions around this. How did your relationship with Dr. James Andrews start? And what was the original vision for teaming up with him?
Yeah, so Dr. Andrews has had a relationship with Baptist Healthcare in Pensacola, Florida, Gulf Breeze, Florida, for since really 2006 and 2007 is really when that I first started. And that was early on in my career. I did my first project with Baptist Healthcare in 2007, I believe, or 7 or 8. And it was involving around Andrews, the Andrews Institute physical therapy clinics. And so that was an entree for me to really interact with the Andrews way and the Andrews brand. And Baptist was an early client for me, and I was very thankful for the opportunities that they gave me. And so I was very much aware of the power of that brand. And in 2012, Dr. Andrews moved his practice full-time from Birmingham down to Northwest Florida, and working out of the Andrews Institute full-time. And in doing so, he became an employed physician of Baptist Healthcare and signed his name, image, and likeness into a partnership with Baptist Healthcare. And the idea was for them to partner with other health systems and other providers around the country to really galvanize and memorialize the Andrews way and the Andrews brand. And they had some success with that. They had a really good partnership they did out in Dallas. And then in 2021, Dr. Andrews began to wind down his clinical career, and in doing so, he wanted to maybe do more with that, the mindset and thought process of his brand. I was lucky enough to partner with him and with a few others in buying back his name, image, and likeness and rights from Baptist. Obviously, Baptist still owns the brand in this Northwest Florida market. And certainly Andrew still has his brand in Birmingham with his original practice there. But we have aligned with Dr. Andrews since really 2021 and have made fantastic partnerships and strategic partnerships with other health systems around the country. I think most notably, we've had a really successful run with Ochsner out of New Orleans. Not only New Orleans, but all of the state of Louisiana and South Mississippi. And Ochsner has rebranded their entire musculoskeletal service line to Ochsner Andrews. That's been a fantastic win for us. We have other partnerships in Oklahoma and other parts of Florida and beyond. And so it's been a fantastic way to align with Dr. Andrews and to help memorialize all of the fantastic work he's done. I mean, not everybody realizes that he has over 650 fellows nationwide that has gone through his fellowship. And so many of the team physicians to all the universities, colleges, and professional teams that we know and love came through Dr. Andrews. And so his legacy is immense. And honestly, it's a huge responsibility and honor to be a part of carrying on that legacy with this company, Andrews Medicine. And so it's been a real joy. And it's been a real honor, and there's a lot more in front of us to do, but we've got a great thing going with Andrews Medicine.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes. And follow-up question to that, when you're building a brand or building on a brand like Andrews Medicine that's tied to elite athletes and world-class performance, how does that influence your own standards for excellence?
Well, I think, there's a reason that brand got to where it got, and that is Dr. Andrews' commitment to integrity and doing what's right and treating people in the right manner. I mean, I've been lucky enough to interact with a lot of Dr. Andrews fellows, and without a doubt, every one of them bring up the way he treats people and the way he treats patients. So certainly, people and the real scientific and technical people can geek out on how good he is, and others are in their technique and precision, and all that's important. But the way in which he treats people, and the way, and not only the patients, but he thinks of this as a team effort, and the extenders. And he'll say that, the athletic trainers and the physical therapists are just as important to the process that he is, and so. There's a lot to take away from that. And I think, to your question about building on the brand, you're not going to build on the brand unless you stay true to what got you there. And so in that sense, I mean, staying true to the blocking and tackling and the fundamentals of the importance on how to treat people, and making sure that whoever's adopting the Andrews way and onboarding the Andrews way is fully committed to that as well. And not just looking to place the A on the building and get notoriety, but really, really bought in to all of those aspects of the Andrews way, and living and breathing that every day. I mean, we've got to make sure that they're big believers in that. Otherwise, we shouldn't partner with them. Yeah,
and I imagine it requires a lot of diligence to filter, to make sure you have the right people to protect that brand and the standards of excellence. Moving on, and this is the section of the show where I really like to get inside your head, inside some of the different things, maybe different habits, mindsets around, to what makes up Chad Henderson. What makes you tick?
I think I'm addicted to progress. You said action, but I love moving things forward. I love having a vision, and I love creating, and I love getting other people involved in that and seeing them flourish. So I think from a business aspect, that's what makes me tick. I think I could not do that if I wasn't really grounded in my family, my wife, and my kids, and my faith come first. And I think that has always been a part of who I am. I grew up in, again, as I shared with you before, a very family-centric upbringing, and I want to make sure that my kids have the same thing. So whatever progress I'm addicted to is not going to get in the way of Saturday football games or, what other obligations that we have as a family. So I think you have to be grounded in things like that. But whatever your passion is, but what what makes me tick from a business perspective is seeing things come to reality. And we can talk about the East Garden District as an example, but we've been working on this since 2016, 17. This vision of creating a curated district where people are walking around and enjoying this particular part of downtown Pensacola. And I've had it in my head that it would be anchored by a very vibrant placemaking hotel with a rooftop experience. And that's been, 8 years ago. It's been in my head. And now we're seeing the building go up. So it's very validating and very fulfilling. But I really enjoy having a vision and working really hard to bring people alongside and help to make that vision a reality.
I love it. And, you have to have that big why behind what you're doing, or you would have quit a long time ago, right? All of the adversity, the man or the people, the critics outside the arena, right? Like all of the noise, the COVID challenges, interest rates, insurance, partners, cost of construction, like the list is infinity. So having that why behind it is able, you have to have that in order to reach your goals. Staying on habits, when life gets chaotic, you mentioned, deal flow, family obligations, travel. You do a ton of traveling. What's the one habit you refuse to drop because everything else starts to slide if you let it go?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think dedicated time with family, and especially propelling forward the Henderson family traditions that I grew up in. As an example, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, and we're going to be with the family on Thursday, and then we're going to be at the farm for the weekend for opening for hunting season. So my boys, I spent a lot of time outdoors, and they're there with me, and then my girls come too, and but the traditions that I learned around being outdoors, hunting and fishing, I've created and invested a lot of time and effort in creating these places that really accentuate those traditions. So we're lucky enough to have a farm, and lucky enough to have what we call kind of our fish camp that we spend a lot of time in the summer. But there are absolutely dedicated times. In fact, the week between Christmas and New Year's is probably my favorite week of the year, and it's because I'm at the farm with my family and with my boys, and I don't feel like that I'm missing out on anything or I'm getting way behind. But just being dedicated to that. I mean, we take family trips together, we make memories, but that is without a doubt, that there is a undoubted cadence to that I just will not, I'm not going to mess up. I mean, that's what we're doing this for. And so 100% I'm focused on that.
I love it. And I think it's important for, guys like you and I that have very driven, have big goals, and have all these different things going on, to be intentional about carving that time out. Because if you don't, you just blow a train wreck right through it, right? And so being grounded in that and keeping that as a forefront is extremely important. I'm curious, there's so many different philosophies around this. What kind of things do you read, and what people do you surround yourself with that help you think big and cast a big vision for yourself and your business?
So, and I don't get to do this as much as I used to, but I love hearing people's story. I really enjoy. I mean, like your podcast is a great example. It's to listening to people's stories and their background and hearing what they've been through. So whether it's multiple podcasts, I really, really enjoy hearing people's stories and how they react to adversity or how they maybe attacked opportunity. All of those things I really, really enjoy. I've read, I go on and off and being a big reader. I mean, there's a couple of books that I've really enjoyed. I really like Breakthrough Company as an example. That's been big for me. I think one of the initiatives one of the things I took away from that book is that to have a long lasting company or organization. It talks a lot about organizational character and how over time that becomes true culture. I think culture is a word that gets probably thrown around too easily these days, but But it's also this notion of crowning the company, as a founding, a member of an organization, as being a founder. I mean, you can get caught up in being the founder, and all of a sudden, whether you planned this to happen or not, it can be too much about you. So I think crowning the company and crowning the organization is something that I've learned, from that book in particular. But I loved being around positive people. I love being around people that carry great energy. I mean, that fires me up. I mean, not all our team members have that kind of energy. And I love, bringing forth, hey, even though we know we're going to get knocked down, we can't wait to get back up and can keep swinging. So I like being inspired. I love inspiring people. And so I think, having a great energy is something that, it's fun to build on. And you got to have the right mindset and the right people around you with that. Certainly be grounded in reality. Let's not fly around in the clouds and kid ourselves. I'm not saying that, but certainly, let's find a way that we can and ask how we can move forward and not what's holding us back.
Yeah, so good. And if you haven't tuned into the Founders podcast, I'll send it to you. It's the best podcast there is. Anyone listening, it's called Founders, and
I have gotten that. Yep, I listened to that. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's super good. I mean, he dives into like the history's greatest founders, like biographies and autobiographies. And I also love hearing other people's stories, because you realize like how much shit and pain people have to go through to get to the end goal. And it's really not even about the end goal. It's about the journey, right? And everyone at the end of their life that has ever wrote a book or talked about their story, they like light up when they're going through it, not when they've created the wealth or they have all of the things. It's all about like, and I'm getting chills talking about this because like, I feel like I'm in the thick of it right now, and I love it. I love the game.
Yeah, Kyle, you hit everything nail on the head there. I mean, you're right. It's not about the summit; it's about the journey. But you have to be disciplined to stop at some lookouts along the way up the mountain and enjoy it and reflect, enjoy the people around you, and high five and have some victory laps. And so, I think you're exactly right. I mean, just this being where your feet are and enjoying the journey and being knowing that you're going to go through some mud and some tough times, but just keep tracking. I mean, I think that's a big part of this. It's certainly a focal point for me.
Yeah. And it can be easier said than done, because it's like, okay, accomplish this goal. What's next? Right?
Hearing people's stories bring reality to what a journey is, right? I mean, it's not just a case study of a fantastic outcome. It's really being intentional of understanding what a mindset or what somebody went through, or just being right there, a front row seat to that journey, and it brings reality to it. To know that things are going to go way good, they're going to go way bad, but you can keep moving forward.
Yeah, it helps align your perspective, right? So you and your wife, Brooke, are raising 4 kids. What do you hope they will say they watched and learned from you? Not what you told them, but what they saw.
Oh, man. I think, back to the being grounded in true core values. I think, and living them out and acting them out and not just talking about them. The way you treat people, the way you give back, the way you impact people around you, the way you lift others up, and the way that you stay true to what's most important, your faith and family. All of those things I hope they take by watching and observing. I think, some of the greatest compliments is that, whether you're with, a very, uber successful, CEO or celebrity, you treated, the person that is helping to clean the office the same way. I mean, and you can, have this, I think the ability to genuinely interact with people, I think, is getting, harder and harder to come by with so much screen time and AI. I mean, so I hope they learn that, treating people and interacting with people is is really, really important, and especially in, I think, where we're going as a society. I mean, just to be genuine about it and build those relationships, because at the end of the day, relationships is what you have. And that's actually what I love about our business. I mean, Kyle, is that we're a relationship centric business. We're not a market centric business. We're not, we're not a land centric business. I mean, we're relationship centric, and we really work hard to earn people's trust and build relationships. So I hope I hope that is what they observe. I mean, it's an interesting question, and one I'd like to think a little more on, but I think that's my first pass at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, typically your gut, right, is where you should land. You bring up a great point about like screen time and next generation. And I've got to ask, what would you say is the most underrated skill for young people, specifically coming into real estate?
Underrated skill. From my perspective of the business, I think, again, the most underrated is the ability to interact with people of all different backgrounds, skill sets, and their objectives. In real estate, you depending on what aspect of real, but if you're a developer perspective, you have to be able to interact with people that are very technical and analyst and numbers driven, return driven. At the same time, you have to be able to deal with users, end users and clients, and understand what the goal. You also have to deal with vendors and partners like construction folks. And so at the end of the day, the common denominator is that you're in the people business, and you got to be good at dealing with people. I would say for a young person in real estate, it's great to get a foundation, and certainly from an analytical perspective, an analyst is a really good way to learn a lot of different aspects of the business. But trying to mold and grow with the foundation, interacting with various aspects of the business and people associated with those aspects of the business, I think there's a lot to be learned from that.
Yeah.
And do so with humility, and the notion of always don't overpromise and underperform. Always do the opposite, and build and be honest. And we like to say around here that bad news does not age well.
Yeah.
So don't run from the problem.
Yeah.
And if something pops up, let's talk about it. Let's all know about it, and let's work, to find solutions, and don't hide it and hope that's going to go away, or don't try to be a hero and solve it by yourself. So yeah, those things I think are, the ability to communicate and interact with people, I think is huge in real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I agree kind of about the analyst thought, but like, I think you're spot on that it's all about people. Like you can always find someone to work around a spreadsheet and, be able to pull levers and when you're financially modeling, you can get that spreadsheet to say whatever you want, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of financial engineering going on. And yes, it's a muscle you need to have. But I mean, like you said, people, building relationships, adding value, and then being very amiable. We're reading as a team the timeless How to Win Friends and Influence People, by Dale Carnegie, and really just understanding the other person's perspective, right? And talking from their interest and not your own interest is ultimately how you're going to best connect with people. Let's wrap this up. Finish this sentence. A true legacy builder is someone who
leaves things, people, and places better than they found it.
Bingo. Love it. That's a great answer. Chad, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been a great conversation, bunch of wisdom. You're someone, again, that inspires me just to watch what you're doing, how big you think. Anytime I think I'm thinking big or have set big goals, I just go type in Chad and Catalyst and see what he's up to. And it always humbles me. Yeah. So thank you for that. And I mean, what you're doing for Pensacola. I'm a Pensacola born and raised guy, and love, like, us Pensacolians are very passionate about our area. And I think that we would all agree that we're at the very early stages of our growth, and you're, pouring in and building your company here. I think that's huge. Like, a lot of people, and even as I've grown my company, they said, do you think you could find the talent you need to get to your goals, what you want in Pensacola? And I say, hell yes. Like, absolutely. There's great people here. We're not the biggest market. Anyway, thank you for what you're doing for our area and for guys like me, next generation. Just super grateful for you and for your time here.
Well, I appreciate it, Kyle, man. Thanks so much for all the kind words. Appreciate what you're doing here and what you're doing with this podcast. I think it's a great vehicle for folks to learn about other people's stories. So I really appreciate doing that. Thanks for what you're doing for Pensacola, and man, all the best and best of luck. You got it going your way. Keep it that way.
Yeah, appreciate that. And to our listeners, if you've been inspired by today's conversation, remember that legacy isn't reserved for CEOs or industry leaders. It begins with how you lead where you are, the culture you build around you, and the people you choose to invest in. Until next time, keep building something that matters. Thank you.